Well, the history of Cattlemen's Steakhouse really started when the Stockyards opened up here in our backyard. 4 new packing houses opened up branches of the original company from Chicago here in Stockyard City. So we had the Stockyards adjacent to them, which raised and stored the cattle that went to the packing houses. The packing houses fabricated and processed the meat, put it on refrigerated rail cars, and sent it to areas in the Midwest of the United States. These packing houses employed thousands of people. It was the largest employer in Oklahoma for many, many years because they operated 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Cattlemen's started in 1910 when all these buildings around here started opening up. And there's 2 businesses left in this area that started in 1910, the Rexall drugstore on the corner and Cattlemen's. And Cattlemen's originally started as a small little cafe, and as the story would have it, in 1945, Gene Wade came back from World War II and took his life savings in a smoky hotel room where there was a wild crap dice game going on, and leveraged his entire life savings at the roll of a dice to see if he could win Cattlemen's from the existing owner. Hank Fry was the owner at the time, and he put up the cafe if Gene could roll a hard 6, which he did. Very difficult, very unusual bet. Lucky, some people would say. Gene had never been in the restaurant business before, so from 1945 to 1990, he built this restaurant from the cafe into the restaurant that it is today. Well, I had the pleasure of meeting Gene Wade in our state restaurant association, so fellow restaurateurs get together on a regular basis and have meetings and conventions and socials and things like that. So we had known Gene for a number of years, and once we came in and took over the restaurant and he stepped out, he was still present here every day in his rocking chair down in the coffee shop.
On the day we signed the lease, Gene gave me 2 things. He gave me the recipe to the salad dressing. It was just an old dingy piece of paper that he had it written down on that was in his billfold. And he gave me a $1,000 bill, which I had never seen a $1,000 bill. They don't float around very often. And he said, give me back the $1,000 if you make it a year. And so at the end of 1 year, I walked in and gave him back his $1,000.
Gene was an incredible guy. He was a very honorable man, very quiet, very soft-spoken, very committed to his business and his community. I did ask him one time, how in the world did you come to bring yourself to come up with that unbelievable bet that was almost impossible to win? And he said, son, the only thing I can tell you is alcohol is an evil spirit. So I assumed that there was probably alcohol involved, and maybe that those decisions were made were not very clear decisions that turned out to be very lucky in his behalf. Gene was very involved politically in the community. People looked up to him so much that the first year that we came and took over, on election day, we walked in and there was a stack of ballots at the cash register up front. And all these people, when they came in to eat, they'd grab a ballot. And I asked Gene, what are they doing with those ballots? And he said, well, I filled it out for them. And I said, why would you do that? He said, well, they trust me to know who to vote for. So, needless to say, politicians very endeared to him because he influenced a lot of votes. Gene always spent his time at this restaurant. So between adding on to the main cafe, numerous different dining rooms downstairs, and adding on upstairs, he really built the restaurant into a significant community destination because people were used to coming here for special occasions. When we took it over, it had a great reputation, and it had gone through some really rough times from the oil bust, so economically things were not very good around this area. But Gene had worked really hard for 45 years to build it up to the restaurant that it was. When we took over, the menu prices had been lowered because of the oil bust. Some of the quality had been lowered. Some of the portion sizes had been lowered to allow people to afford to eat here. We did a 180-degree change. We increased quality, we increased portion sizes, and we increased prices. Knowing that we were going to lose some customers because of the price increase, we knew it was the only way that this restaurant was going to be profitable. And we began a very aggressive marketing campaign as a destination for steak. You know, the old saying is, if both partners were exactly the same, they wouldn't need each other. I think Dick and I are a great example of that. He has strengths that I don't have, and I have strengths that he may not be as strong at. So we complement each other in a lot of different ways.
I started working in this industry when I was 13, and David had too. And David had a real love for the food business.
Dick is a very disciplined individual. He doesn't change from day to day, week to week, month to month. He's always been a believer in the basics of the restaurant industry. Hot food hot, cold food cold. Be kind to your guests, treat your employees well. Those are really the key cornerstones as far as we're concerned, and be consistent in what we do.
The consistency of the quality of the steaks is like I've never seen in the history of Cattlemen's since Mr. Egan and Mr. Stubbs took over.
We'll probably serve on an average of about 10,000 guests per week, which constitutes a lot of tasty steaks.
It's probably not fair because I've been coming here so long. When I walk in, I know most of the people. So I am greeted warmly, especially by the people I know, but I think what's more important is to watch them interact with people that have never been here before.
Well, it's very rewarding when people from the community come in and write on social media and tell us when they're eating in the restaurant what this restaurant means to them. People have eaten here since they were little kids, and they came here with their parents and their grandparents. And this restaurant represents a very significant part of their life, celebrating milestones along the way. And it's very satisfying to know that what we've done to have a destination for people to continue those memories of anniversaries, weddings, birthdays, all sorts of celebrations that occur here because they've been doing it for decades and decades. And they just don't know what they would do if Cattlemen's wasn't ever here anymore. It's definitely a destination restaurant. People drive from 5 miles or further at night to have dinner here. We do a tremendous lunch business. We have a lot of people. We're close to downtown. We're not far from the state capitol. A lot of people will come here for a business lunch. They might come back with their relatives from out of town for dinner, dressed up in jeans and a cowboy hat. It's the most varied demographic of any restaurant I've ever seen in my life. We've been here for 112 years, and we expect the restaurant will be around for many more years to come so that we can keep the light burning and keep the memories fond in people's minds so that they can pass it on to the next generation. We love the young people that come to our restaurant. We do everything we can to make them feel comfortable and warm so that when it's their 10th birthday and their 21st birthday and their wedding, this is the place they want to come and celebrate. Everything that we do here is a recipe. A recipe is something that, when followed, has a known outcome. The aging of our beef, the purchasing of our beef, how we craft and cut each steak is our recipe for what we believe to be the perfect steak. When a guest comes to Cattlemen's, they have to start off with the delectable lamb fry appetizer that we have. It's our most popular appetizer. We sell more lamb fry appetizers than anything else on the menu, and you roll right into a salad with our world-famous Cattlemen's house dressing. Marinated oil for 2.5 weeks in garlic, spices, different ingredients that make it an incredible, unique, creamy, rich salad dressing. Then you're going to select one of our incredible steaks. We use only prime and choice beef. We master craft those steaks, hand cut in our own butcher shop. Select the steak that you most prefer, whether it's a thick, delicious, tender filet or a rich, marbled ribeye steak, which is probably our most popular steak here. We're going to cook it. We're going to sear it on the broiler. It's going to be cooked just the way you want it. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. You're going to have a great side dish with that, and you can't leave without having a delicious piece of homemade coconut cream pie. The most popular dessert we have here. People cannot leave the restaurant without having a slice made fresh in our bakery right here. Our menu is very basic. We're a steakhouse. 95% of the guests that come here to eat are going to order a steak. We have some of those other things that we're not going to name. We're a steakhouse. We have aligned ourselves with packers that have long-term relationships, like 4 and 5 generations of buyers with ranchers in the particular part of the country that we only want our beef to come from. We receive the meat in our butcher shop. We carefully craft each steak depending on which cut it is to a very rigid specification. We've learned in these 48 years what customers like about their steak and what customers don't like about their steak. So it's imperative that we cut every steak exactly the way the customer likes it. That it's cooked on a charbroiler. It's seasoned with our own house steak seasoning. We call it Burka seasoning. It was named after a chef here back in the 1930s by the last name of Burka. And the seasoning that we put on the steak is seasoned on both sides, which we think adds a lot to the flavor. Once that steak is cooked to perfection, it's put on the plate, and we have a large pot of beef au jus on the side, and we put a little splash of hot beef au jus on every plate. That ensures that every bite is going to be swimming in a pool of delicious juice with that perfect seasoning on top to give you the perfect steak. So one of the craftsmanship tactics that we use, for example, on this ribeye steak, is to remove the excess fat that is in the middle of some of them. So we'll go through and actually carve that excess fat out and pin it together and cook it so that when you receive the steak, you'll have all the marbling in the meat, but you won't have that excess fat in the middle. When President Bush came here to eat, he had enjoyed a nice T-bone steak that since then we have labeled as the Presidential T-bone. It's probably our second most popular steak on the whole menu. Well, we're incredibly honored to be inducted into the Steakhouse Hall of Fame. It's one thing to be recognized in our own state, but to be recognized across the whole United States of America is a great honor that we're very, very proud of.
Being inducted into a Steakhouse Hall of Fame for a place like Cattlemen's is, well, finally. Create your Hall of Fame and come to us, because this is a Hall of Fame place for anybody.
Our heroes in the steak business were probably a gentleman by the name of Glenn Eves, who had a great steakhouse in Oklahoma City by the name of Glenn's Hickory Inn. It was world renowned. It was fabulous. The contemporaries that we look up to are Bob Samboll, the original Bob's Steak and Chop House in Dallas, Dale Wamstead, who built the Del Frisco Empire. Of course, Peter Luger's in New York is a standard that everybody looks up to. We love Burn's Steakhouse in Tampa, Florida. It's an incredible temple of beef. We have some of the greatest guests in the world that any restaurant could wish for. We have incredibly dedicated employees that come to work every day just for the sole purpose to please our guests.
Our goal is for Cattlemen's to last a lot longer than we'll live.
Fate sort of shoved the right people in its path to keep it going, and who knows who will be next. Hope I'm around to see who it is.